Hello! We have a bit of an old school setup here today. I used to film in this location when I was doing my makeup and stuff, and I thought I'm just gonna do it here today again because why not? I'm feeling really tired today. I start a lot of these videos by saying that, which is kind of reassuring because the past few days I've been feeling so tired that I've been like, have I ever felt this tired in my life? But I think I have. I think I feel like this. I am going to be sitting and doing my makeup and chatting. I love doing these videos because I always feel better once I've done my makeup. I feel like it's like kind of one of those things like having a shower, of just like doing something to get ready, make yourself feel a bit better. Obviously there's absolutely nothing wrong with wearing makeup or not wearing makeup. That's not the discussion for today. The discussion for today is anxiety and periods. And I actually can't believe that I've never discussed these two things as a topic. I used to do loads of videos on anxiety and other things on my channel, but I've not done one for a wee while, and this one has just been one that I should have done a long time ago. Although it's one of those things in life, the longer you live the more you learn, and I feel like I've learnt so much more the past year or so about anxiety and periods. So if you're somebody watching that menstruates, this video might be of use or interest to you. But also if you're somebody that does not menstruate in the classic way, or you don't bleed, or you know, you just don't have ovaries, that's also fine. And I think it's just good to learn if you're somebody watching that does not menstruate. It's still a useful video because I think it's important to know what your partner might be going through or your family members might be going through. It's just an important thing to learn about. And it's just one of those things that I kind of feel a little bit like, you know, that lady at school. I don't know if you had the same thing wherever you're from. There was always a lady at school who would kind of help the girls by walking them around the school and telling them about their periods. It was always really uncomfortable and quite strange, but she'd show you like where the period bins were, and you know, you'd go into a room at school and you'd learn about periods. And I don't really remember much except my teacher bringing in her daughter's pads and tampons, and we all got to like hold them. Don't really know what it was about. I don't feel like it helped me at all, but yeah, that was kind of the first thing I wanted to talk about. Was I feel like at school girls were kind of taught about periods and that they're going to happen to you at some point, and you know what actually happens and the bleeding, and what you should do to help the bleeding, and that you might have cramps and stuff like that. And that's the only thing I remember getting taught at school. But there's so much, obviously so much more to periods than that. Periods are a whole cycle, and as somebody who menstruates, my whole cycle has different parts to it, and same with you if you're somebody that menstruates. Our cycles have loads of different parts to them. There's 4 stages in the menstrual cycle, and each stage has different physical and mental symptoms that I've just found extremely useful to note. I use the app Flow, I think it's called. There's loads of period apps that all do quite similar things, but I use Flow because you can track your symptoms like sore boobs or cramps or nausea, or the mental symptoms of feeling irritated or tired or whatever it is, and I just find that really useful. It's so crazy that I literally never thought that my menstrual cycle could affect my anxiety or anything like that. I just didn't think the two were connected at all. But of course they are. Like when you're menstruating, or you're at all stages of your menstrual cycle, there are different hormones, different levels of hormones, high levels of estrogen at sometimes in the month, and then sometimes it just completely drops, and that's when you might experience tiredness and stuff. So I just thought I'd kind of talk through the stages of the cycle and what they might mean for people with anxiety. The reason I think this is an important video for people with anxiety is because a lot of us, particularly if you have health anxiety, which I know a lot of you do, but I think any kind of mental illness or chronic illness or anything like that, you are just more heightened to things. I think we're more sensitive, like our bodies are more sensitive. We pick up on things a bit more a lot of the time. So I feel like we're more likely to be affected by things like ovulation and menstrual cycles and premenstrual syndrome and all those kinds of things, I think we're more likely to feel the effects of them and maybe not be aware that that's why our anxiety is worse, or we're feeling more tired or more unwell. So the first stage of the cycle is the bleeding cycle. This is when you're obviously on your period. And I think a lot of us, when we're growing up, think that this is what a period is, you know, like the only part that we need to be aware of the month is the bleeding part, and that's the only thing that is irritating and is the only time that we can experience different moods and, you know, bleeding and all these things. So that's the only thing we really need to worry about. And even then, we're still not really taught. We're taught like how to deal with the blood aspect, but we're not taught how to deal with like all the other aspects that come along with that. The bleeding part of the month, so your actual period, is the time of the month that you should really be resting as much as you possibly can. Obviously, if we lived in an ideal world, we'd be able to, if you were somebody that really suffered badly with low energy or cramps or whatever, you'd be able to take time off. But we don't live in a world like that, because most people work in a way that they're not able to take time off for or slow down at that time. But just generally speaking, when you're bleeding, your energy is much more likely to be a lot lower, and it's a time that you maybe might not want to schedule in meeting people that bring your energy down lower, or it might be a time that you want to talk to people about how you're feeling, or just generally like amp up your self-care. Everyone's cycle and periods are so different, so there's not really like a one size fits all. And for me, I actually sometimes feel some kind of relief when I start my period, because it's kind of releasing something, and it also makes you feel like, okay, I'm not like, there's not something wrong with me, like there was a reason for that, for those hormonal outbreaks, or for feeling really tired and not very well. That's the first stage of the cycle, is the bleeding cycle. The next stage is the follicular cycle. I can never say that right. That's kind of the stage between bleeding and ovulation. And it's a time where your brain is more likely to like work things out, solve problems, have more energy, have a better mood. And it's a time that if you're going to start a new project or you're wanting to create, you're more likely to experience the creative kind of emotions, and you're more likely to experience wanting to be more creative and outward, I think. And like I said, this isn't the same for everybody. You might, especially if you're somebody that suffers with anxiety or depression, you might not experience this in like the big bold, like let's paint a massive canvas and, you know, start a new business and all these things. That's not what I mean. I mean that you're probably more likely to be a little bit more outward than you usually would be in other parts of your cycle. So it doesn't mean, you know, that you need to like completely change your life at these times of your cycle. It's just that if you're going to start something new, then it's a good idea to do it in that time period. Moving on to ovulation, which is the time of the month that you're probably more likely to feel quite confident and sexy and higher libido, more energy. And it's time of the month that you're more likely to be able to cope with harder things at this time, because you're feeling a bit better. So if there's things that you've been putting off that feel you need like a certain you type of head on, then it's a good idea to do it at this time. It's a good stage of the cycle to be in. And also something to note, I never really experienced this part of my cycle. Like I never really ovulated when I was on the contraceptive implant, which I got taken out I think about 6 months ago, and I now totally experience ovulation and all the things that come with it. And sometimes you're going to experience some pain and stuff like that. There's loads of ovulation things that, you know, that you can look up and learn more about, but it's just, I think the psychological side of these things is just the most important for us at the moment. And then you move on to the last stage of the cycle, which is the premenstrual cycle. You're about to go in and do it all again. This is like meant to be the hardest part of the cycle, because it's when you're starting to get cravings, you're starting to feel mood swings, you're starting to feel pains, more tired. And it's a time where you're kind of starting to go inward again. So it's a time where you're maybe starting to clean more around your house. You're starting to be in that nesting kind of stage of your cycle. So it's kind of like the preparation before the hibernation is kind of how I see it. And then you go back into your bleeding part of your cycle again, where you're kind of resting again. And this is just like a cycle of life. There's so many cycles of life, and I think this video is quite strange for me to make, but the reason I wanted to make it was, the more I've been learning about this, the more it's easier for me to kind of understand where I'm at, rather than feeling like I feel really sick, why do I feel so sick, and getting anxious about it, or being like I'm so tired, why am I always so tired. Knowing where I am in my cycle and tracking it has been just so helpful to understanding why I might be more tired, why I might be more stressed, why I might be more anxious. And like I said, we experience, I think us people with chronic illnesses or mental illnesses, we're more likely to feel these things than the average person. I think there's a lot of people that might go through this cycle and not really feel much difference, or or they maybe just don't feel the need that they need to track it or slow things down or anything like that. And yeah, I just think it's important to note all of this, because I think we're taught a lot about how to avoid pregnancy and how to keep our periods under control and all these things, when actually we shouldn't be doing that. We should be honouring what part of our cycle we're in, and adjusting our lives accordingly. The reason I decided to make this video at this specific point in time is last week I was at the period stage of my cycle, and I was having my period, and I was absolutely exhausted. And today I'm still feeling quite tired, but I was feeling exhausted. My whole body was aching. I felt like stiff. Just everything felt really awful. I had like flu-like symptoms, and I think I realised it was because I totally was not registering what was going on in my body at all. I was like, yeah, you might be on your period, but you still need to get things done. You still need to go out there. You still need to do the things you need to do. Or if you don't, X, Y, and Z will happen. The anxious thoughts, the catastrophizing thoughts. And I really do feel like if I just honoured that time, understood it was my period and I needed to slow down, then I don't think I'd still be experiencing the symptoms I am now. I stopped my period I think yesterday or the day before, but I'm still feeling so exhausted and achy and like just generally not very well, and I think it's just because I wasn't listening, and I really wasn't listening to my body, and I was just kind of in that more the headspace of just doing and having to get things done rather than listening to my body. Also, this doesn't mean that at the other stages of your cycle that you're not allowed to rest, or that you should, these aren't like rules or things that everybody experiences. Like I said, everyone experiences it in such a different way, but it's just kind of like a guidance of how you might be feeling. But if you're tired at other stages of your cycle when you're meant to be energized, don't make that another anxiety thing. You're tired when you're tired, and you're not just tired because of your cycle. There's so many other reasons, and especially in the world that we live in today, where everything is crazy, you might be feeling more tired than usual, and I definitely am. This lockdown malarkey is making me very tired and losing the will to live. And like I said, I don't want to sound like the lady that shows you where the period bins are at school, but I just think this is really something that us women are not taught. We're taught about everything, about like what's going to happen when you have your period, but not about the actual cycle of it and how it affects people, especially with mental illnesses. Like, I think it's just such an interesting and important thing to track, and that's why I thought I'd make this video today, just to kind of open up that conversation and kind of chat about how important I think it is to be tracking your period and understanding it a bit more. And it's just so helpful that when you're getting to points where you feel like, oh my god, I'm starting to get anxious again. I always feel anxious. Why do I always feel anxious? Or I'm starting to feel sick again. Oh my god, like, why do I feel like this? Maybe there's something wrong with me. And start going down those rabbit holes of thoughts. Just looking back at your app, your period app, and being like, oh, I felt this way this time last month, or I always feel like this when I'm ovulating, or I always feel like this when I'm bleeding, or whatever. It's just more helpful than it thinking that there's something really wrong. Okay, so I have talked enough about periods today. I think that's us done. I really hope that, if you're somebody with anxiety that has menstrual cycles, that this was a helpful video. and maybe just made you think, if you're somebody that's not already tracking your period and kind of looking into that kind of side of things, that's maybe something interesting. There's also a whole other topic of contraception, especially birth control and anxiety. That's a whole other video. If you'd like me to talk about that and my experiences of hormonal contraceptives and that kind of thing, then let me know, because that's a whole nother kettle of fish and a whole nother thing that we should talk about. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you soon. Bye.